It's Ronnie Bringle here with our color wheel of fruit, and it looks like it's coming along quite nicely. You may have noticed that I've added a little red stripe around the outer edge. I thought maybe I would get that in there before I got all those leaves and painted over the top of it, so that I'd have that nice kind of a little framing element in there. And I have added a few leaves, gotten started on a few of the grape leaves in here, so that I can now go ahead and get my plum and some grapes in here. I need to do last time we did the red violet. We did the red and the red violet. This time we're going to do the violet and the blue violet, and we'll get those in there and we'll be well on our way to having our color wheel finished up. So I'm going to go ahead and get started right away. I'm going to do some nice seedless red grapes in the place of the violet color, because they seem to be about the color that I want to use. I want to switch from this more of a red violet into a little bit more of a blue violet here. I'm going to use a round blender. This happens to be a number 6, and I'm going to dip and dab into my violet. I'll probably pick up for some dark values some of a little bit of blue violet, and I'm going to pick up some of the red violet and maybe even a little bit of red, so that I can give these grapes the right color. So here we go. I'm going to start with my violet, and I'm just going to use quite a bit of paint on my brush. I'll pick up a little bit more here, and I want to this is kind of that smooshing motion that I do. I want to push this out, cover up the pattern lines, and kind of just get some of that color all over the grape. And then I'm going to blot my brush slightly, pick up some of my white Titan Buff or smoked pearl, and just gently kind of place that on that grape, lay the brush down and blend and pat so that that goes out. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of my red violet and tap that in place, blot my brush, and kind of pat those two together. So I'm just dipping and dabbing, and I want to get a variety of the violet colors, because in order to make these look like real grapes, they have to have more than just one color in there. So I'm using my white and my red violet and violet that we mixed in lesson number 1, and I'm just kind of smashing, pushing the paint around, tapping, blotting, blending to create this first layer of color. I do want to get some dark value back in behind, like there's a hidden grape back there. So I'm going to pick up some of my blue violet and put that right in that empty spot there. I'm thinking now that possibly this grape, it might be a little too big, so I'm just going to trim the size down somewhat. When you see my brush disappear from the screen, it's because I'm blotting my brush. So I don't want one color to dominate. I want to be able to control what each color is doing, and I do that by blotting my brush. A little bit of white now. And the same as we did on all the other fruits, we're just basically starting out by putting down enough paint to cover. And I didn't go out to the pattern line on a couple of these grapes because I realized in painting that my pattern was showing the grapes to be just a little bit too big. I've done some adjusting on this pattern as I've been painting along, and it got a little too big on some of these grapes, so when I'm drying this, I'll remove some of those pattern lines, take away some of that confusion. And there's another grape right in here. So at this point I've got some various different colors. There are places on the grapes where I see a little more red and places where I see a little more blue. But the overall look is going to be the violet from our color wheel. Right. Just picking up a little more white in here. And now my surface is dry. So one of the things I've observed about grapes is that they do have a lot of different colors in them. A purple grape can have some red where the sun is shining through, or excuse me, where the light is shining through. It can have some pretty strong white highlights. It can have some kind of a frosty look from that little bit of a film that comes on grapes. So what I've been kind of doing here is not blending all of my colors too carefully. I've kind of laid them on there and kind of just blotted them, tapped them to blend slightly, but I haven't really haven't really blended them real smooth. So what I want to do now is to tuck some of the really dark value up into each grape as it is coming out from underneath another grape. So I'm into my darkest blue violet color, and I'm just creating a really dark value where the grape would be under another grape. Give it that dimension, that layering look, layered look of having one grape on top of another. Lots of dipping and dabbing on these grapes, and so I'll probably, once I've done my demonstration, I'll probably do a little more dipping and dabbing and a little more highlighting. But I think you can get the idea of what I'm doing here. I'm not trying to blend these grapes really smooth. They're somewhat smooth, but when you look at these red seedless grapes, you can see a lot of different colors in there. A lot of times in the very center of the grape, you'll see the dark color, and maybe around the edges you'll see a little more of the light or more of a reddish color where the skin, or where the light is shining through the skin. So it's a matter of kind of layering on and then adding that white. This back in here where you can see it better. So I'm using my white. I'm using mostly violet, our violet mix, a little bit of red violet, a little bit of red, and a little bit of the blue violet, so that I've got a lot of different values on each grape, and a lot of different colors. Some areas are quite red and other areas are more blue, but the overall look for this position on our color wheel wants to be violet. So you might refer to that, might help you to think of it as purple. And try to aim towards making your grapes have more of a purple look, and just moving these colors around, tapping until they look blended, but not too blended. Okay, then the final step on the grapes would be to take a small round blender that still has a point on it and my white, and I'm going to create a few hard highlights on the grapes. I don't want them to be round circles. They still are going to be more of a kind of an irregular shape. And some can be brighter than others depending on their placement and how close they are to the light source. Those are the steps, so you would repeat those steps again and again until you like the way your grapes look. The plum is painted much the same way as the grapes. Plums can also have a lot of red value to them, and they also have that kind of almost like a chalky look over them from the natural way that plums look before, especially before they're washed. You have kind of a film on them. So what I want to use now is my blue violet. I'm going to start with that. And now is when you're going to compare that to your violet and make sure that your blue violet is actually more blue than your violet. So I'm going to put some of that color on here. I'll tuck it up, and here again we're faced with tucking this plum underneath the grapes. But we'll come back. I'll come back and finish up those grapes. And now I'm going to add my white so I can see whether I'm in the right color family here. And it looks like I am going more into a blue violet, so I'll keep working with that color. I'm doing a lot of patting and kind of rubbing around, pat and rub between my blue violet and my white. And white being tight and buff or smoked pearl. I'll get some of that white out of my brush now, and I want to create a little crease in the plum, so I'm going to go dark again right up there next to the crease. I'll pick up a little bit smaller brush so I can get in that smaller area. And with my lighter value, I'll come out to the pattern line. It's really easy to work with these colors over black because your black just naturally adds the darker values for the shaded areas. It's really easy to create those darks when you're working over the black. So your basic challenge on the plum is just to create somewhat of a little bit of a mottled look so that it's not entirely smooth, and with a little bit of variety of color. I'm kind of dragging and patting this color around, and when I want to create a really intense value, then I'll pick it up on the tip of my brush and just kind of place it in there. So I'll try to tip this there. I think you can see it a little better that way, how it looks just a little bit mottly. And I think I'll enhance that by adding go back to my white one more time. And just, you can work wet into wet as long as you can, but then you can let it dry or dry it with a hair dryer and layer wet over dry. Right now I'm just kind of working wet into wet here. And I kind of like the way that looks. I think I'll add a soft highlight. I don't want to create something really shiny and hard here, but I think I'll maybe create a soft highlight where I think the light would hit the fat part of this plum. And once I get some things around that plum, I'll look to see whether that's actually the way I want it to look. The tip of the plum, I think I'm not going to worry too much about that just yet. I want to paint my blueberries next time, and then I'll clean up the edge of the plum once my blueberries are underneath there. I've got a couple of leaves to put in here. I haven't decided yet whether to put a leaf in here. I'll have to take a look at the overall to see whether it needs it. But there's a leaf that goes in here. And so I'll be working on that, and I will see you next time to paint blueberries.